Hello, sir. You're mute.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Uh, I was just telling that I missed a couple of classes, a few classes, of course. I think various reasons. I hope now onwards will be regular. Be completing. We have to finish by December anyway, and we are just crossed halfway of this course. And I told you that I will be discussing a little bit about some technology of single photon detectors. And then I thought that to understand the actual technology design, I think we should know a little more about fundamentals of photodiode. While photodiodes are used for even it is sometimes designed for a single photon detector as well. So I thought that a little more insight about what are the problems specifically related to noise. And that noise actually the main culprit why a photodiode can't be used as a single photon detector even for avalanche cases. It's some problem issues are there. So I'll just discuss few things and then I will move on to the what is the up-to-date technologies. So if you see normally, conventionally, you know that electron hole pair generates because of one photon. And then if it is a multiple photons, for example, you have flux of photon coming with phi, capital phi here. Then normally you have eta, eta is the efficiency, you multiply with eta, so electron hole pair will be generated and multiply charge, then that should be the current. In the photo detector, normally in the terminal, you supposed to get a current, something like that. If there is a load, I think then you see that current across that load, and as a voltage you can see. Now, if you just look into this expression, this pi flux, photon flux, that means number of photon per second, whatever coming. Okay, so that is nothing but if you have power, P is known for the laser beam or your source, classically, whatever you are thinking, that is a power. Then we know that if you just divide by photon energy h bar omega, then you get the number of photons. Number of photons, then eta multiplication, and then electron hole pair generates, and that is per second, and per second charge flow per second, that is actually current. So that is the case. So now besides detection efficiency eta, sometimes photodiode is characterized by its responsibility. So if you buy a photo detector, it never says about the efficiency. Instead of that, it mentions about the responsivity and responsivity for a given wavelength. Okay, so responsivity is nothing but R. It's a kind of figure of merit of a photo detector again. Instead of eta, it is responsivity. That is nothing but how much current you are getting per milliwatt of power. What is the power you have? That means you normalize it to power. That means I by P. P is the input to your photo detector and I is the output. So that ratio I by P, if you just try to find, then you get actually in terms of eta you get eta times E h bar omega. So here you, from this expression 326, if you see I by P, that means eta times E means electronic charge by photon. So here you see eta, actually ultimately it is coming down to efficiency, and E is the universal constant, h bar is the universal constant, and omega. So omega is the frequency or wavelength, hc by lambda, 2 pi c by lambda, omega equal to. So then it is basically lambda dependent. So you have to know eta efficiency and lambda, that is actually defined as a responsivity, and obviously its dimension will be ampere per watt. Okay, so that is one characteristics or figure of merit we can say. So from the slope IP, it may not be linear. You know, this IP, that means P increases, it looks like that eta, as long as eta is constant, it looks like that I by P, it should be straight line, right? It's a I versus P, it will be straight line. If you take the slope, that is efficiency. But normally, as you go for increasing P, power as you increase, that will not be a straight line, because it will enter into a nonlinear regime. So it will be somehow, photodetector will be saturated, and so it is always advisable not to work in the saturation limit, because that time lot of unwanted noise and unwanted frequencies will be, RF frequencies will be observing. So now with this background, if I try to see that how a photodetector normally can be used for detection and what source of noise can be. So this is actually the case. This is your photodetector. It is basically a PN junction diode. When I say photodiode, that means nothing but a PN junction. So PN junction, in the junction region, you have to illuminate, then electron hole pair will be generated, and then you have to have your reverse bias, so that generated carrier you can sweep away and it will appear as a current. And whatever it will be coming out, whatever it is coming out, that current you can amplify. So sometimes it is called, technically it is a transimpedance amplifier. People use, so that this signal, whatever current is there, you can amplify electronically with electric circuit. That's basically op-amp circuit. So you can amplify that one, and then you can get your output. And if you see the output as a function of time, you can actually record in oscilloscope, or you can see what is the output. If it is a frequency dependent, as a function of frequency, you can see if you use a spectrum analyzer. And little bit go inside the circuit point of view. This is just block diagram. If you see the circuit, this is a photodetector, you are biasing. This is a negative terminal, this is a positive terminal. So negative terminal, you are giving positive bias, that means reverse bias we are giving, V0, and photons are coming. Then because of the reverse bias, current will flow, and this is the load, and this current will appear in the load. And if you try to see if that current is actually your time dependent, this current is time dependent, some AC component is there, and that will also appear here. But when I try to see here what is the voltage across this RL with capacitor and maybe some amplifier you put down here, then what happens is that capacitor will block the DC part, only AC part will be seen by the amplifier, and then that amplification, you will see AC component after amplification, you can see here. So that is what if time dependent variation is there, it will be reflected here as a voltage as a function of time. You are not seeing here current is flowing here, but you see the voltage here. So that's the background. This is how normally you use your photodetector for your normal high intensity, normally laser for optical communications, all those type of things. In the receiver end, you use this type of technique. Now, if you see that the photocurrent through the load resistance, if you just try to see, okay, typically it will have a DC as well as AC time dependent variations will be there, because that will reflect fluctuations in photon flux. We have seen that in a laser, it's a coherent state, when coming, that is actually Poissonian distribution. So even if it is high intensity, you will see some one-to-one electron number comes because of the photon absorption, right? So photons coming in a random way. Random way means in the Poisson's distribution. So at every because photodetector, what it does, it measure up to a certain interval of time and then integrate what is the value it is coming. So if it is just integrating over a certain time, then you see that that current also within that certain sample of time, the photon number will come differently and fluctuations will be there, and then current fluctuations will be there, as we have discussed earlier. So you can actually approximate that current IT, the time dependent current, that it will appear like this current IT. It will be as a function of time. If you see, it is a CW laser, so-called constant intensity is there. Constant intensity means we assume that it's as a function of time, intensity is constant, but in fact photon number actually generating your current, so you will see some kind of fluctuations, and then around that average point you will see some kind of AC oscillation, some delta IT will be there, some deviations will be there as a function of time. So this is a typical output. Any photodetector you see, and just you try to measure this thing, and the detection output will be something like that. Okay, these variations will be there. So it is actually expressed in equation 328, that's the average thing, I, expectation value around that thing plus delta IT, some differentiation is there. Now, the AC component, as I mentioned, that it will be just a filter with the C, and you can see that. Only if you just try to see this AC component, okay, this AC component, that means this part is the noise, right? So this noise, this variation noise can be expressed in this form. That means this is the variation, delta I is the variation. You take a square, I square RL, that is the power, right? So that power we are just representing as a P noise. This is a function of time. Okay. So function of time, if you see this, as this fluctuates, delta I vary, so you see that noise will be there. Now this noise, it is varying as a function of time. Now we would like to see whether this, suppose if I want to use this photodetector for your, at your receiver. So in the receiver, normally, you know, suppose on-off communication is there, on-off switching is there, and you want to send data 1 or 0. So you just switch off and on. Then how fast you can switch on and off, so that you can actually avoid any type of this type of fluctuations happening there. Okay, so that frequency actually depends how fast you are actually switching on and off. So to know the frequency component of the noise, what you do, you just do Fourier transform. So you just Fourier transform, then you can see the frequency component. So whatever delta I version is there, you take the AC component, you subtract from average, whatever average there, the AC component you are saying. Obviously, if you just take simple average and you take mean square, average, then it will be almost 0. So that's why it is better to consider the square value, delta I square, because that is actually that matters of the power, delta I square T. So whenever you are taking square, then plus minus will not be there, always plus, so some power will be there, and then you just do your Fourier transform. And when you see the Fourier transform, you see the noise component as a function of frequency, you see the characteristics will be like this. Okay, so that means as the frequency increases, noise actually drops, and after certain point, you see some kind of saturation, and that is called so-called short noise level, we call it. And then beyond that, actually, for higher, as you go for higher frequency, that noise you can beat, actually almost no noise will be there for very, very high frequency. Okay, so for the very lower frequency, you see certain type of noise that is called classical noise, and then short noise, that is actually really you cannot do anything with your classical control, that is actually quantum limit. And then beyond certain thing, it will be like this. So this is a practical situation, okay, photodetector. So any photon number coming, which is actually photon variation is there, this above this short noise, then only up to this frequency you will be able to measure. So now we need to know, especially I was just thinking of discussing this because most of the time, even single photon detector, avalanche photon detector, or even your quantum single SNSPD, superconducting nanowire single photon detector, they are mostly operated at very low temperature, close to zero temperature, so that you can actually really resolve a single photon. Why is that? That means temperature has to do something for this noise creation, particularly specifically this classical noise. Okay, so for that, I thought that we need to know the origin basically, where from actually this noise is coming, and it is very old story known for a long time. Actually, two types of noise, as I mentioned. That is one type of noise that is a classical noise that is called Johnson noise, mostly known as a Johnson noise. But actual development, Johnson first quantified, but actual theory developed by Nyquist. Nyquist theorem, who is very well known for communication technology, he actually made it famous, this Johnson noise. And then another is short noise. I will just discuss these two type of noise because this is actually ultimate limit for quantum detection, quantum photon detection, photonic detection. So I'll just try to explain a little bit of thought experiment where from this type of noise coming. That is nothing to do with the diode alone. This is something to do with a measurement system with something resistance, and you are just measuring current and load, and something inherently it is coming, something like a fundamental things is there in any circuit, and that is why that noise is there. And that type of noise not only for diode, it can happen for any type of detector. That type of noise can happen. Only thing is that you need to know how to minimize that. Some geometry, some material property, everything you can do that. So we would like to just discuss now what is that actually, where from that origin coming. Then only you will come to know, you can actually say that, yeah, we need to operate at lower temperature to reduce the noise. This is the physics basically. Actually, Johnson quantified in 1928. In the same year, he actually, Nyquist, he published another paper in the same journal, I think Physical Review paper. I think this one. This is the Physical Review paper. This is a single author paper, Nyquist. And he, based on that thing, based on the experiment and quantification from Johnson, he actually explained how it is coming. And that is very interesting and understandable. And if you go through this paper, it is a very nicely written, anyone can read and understand. Even though it is written in 1928, very colloquially written, only 4-page paper. I think I want everyone to read this, because this is not only for detectors, some other purpose also. This type of model, thought process, how people are thinking, that's very, very important. So what he considered that, first he used these 4 figures only. 4 figures to explain this type of noise. So first thing is that he assumed that 2 resistors, you are considering just resistor 1R and another resistor, this R basically. So they are just connected simply like this with 2 terminal. It is connect back to back. It is connected 2 terminal. Okay. So now what is happening? He assumed that, okay, there will be some kind of thermal agitation in this. This is resistor means some conductor basically. Okay, some resistance is there. So some kind of thermal resistance will be there. Thermal agitation of electrons will be there. You can imagine that because of this thermal agitation, some kind of electromotive force will be generated, and then that electromotive force will create some kind of current. Okay, current in the circuit. So similarly, when this current is flowing here, then this resistance will generate some kind of if suppose you are thinking, you could always you can think that okay, same thing can happen here also, that will balance. But his thought process is slightly different. He was just assuming, I think nothing wrong in this type of thinking. Some current is flowing, then what happens here? I square R, some heat will be dissipated. And when this current is flowing, it will lose some energy, and then this heat will be dissipated here. That will actually compensate to that. So that means it meant to say that something it's going, this will create some kind of electromotive force in the circuit here, and this will create this type of electron. That is how somehow it is balancing. Now question is, so if it is balancing, you will not be able to measure, right? So any conductor, if you are measuring something like that, so any two terminal you connect, so you know that one current is flowing this direction, another current is flowing in this direction, then opposite direction. So this is balanced. You won't see anything current or potential difference across that. But what is happening whenever you are using a load, for example, this is your load. Load is connected to some other material here. So that means it is balanced because it is flowing there and it is flowing there. It is balanced, but it is actually flowing. Here it is something flowing and here it is flowing, and somehow it is balancing like electromotive force. It can be generated here, right? So if that is generated, so if you see now figure 1 we are explaining, I just quoted same wordings what he has written Nyquist in his paper. The electromotive force due to thermal agitation in conductor 1 causes a current to be set up in the circuit whose value is obtained by dividing I, the electromotive force, by dividing 1, the electromotive force, by 2R. So that means you are considering some electromotive force is generated. So total resistance is 2R. So what is the current then? So electromotive force divided by 2R. So if that is the current, then you can multiply R, then you can get I square R, then you can get your whatever the power dissipation here, you can find out. This is, for example, you can imagine like a load. Okay, so this absorbed power being equal to the product of the R and the square of the current, I square R, whatever current you are getting dividing by 2R, then you just I square multiplied by R. That is normally what we know, Joule heating effect. In other words, power is transferred from conductor 1 to conductor 2. Now, I think in between a few sentences there, I've just taken the important one. Now, since the two conductors are at the same temperature, it follows directly from the second law of thermodynamics that the power flowing in one direction is exactly equal to the flowing in the other direction. So that is actually somehow it is flowing. Now, figure 2. Now you consider inclusion of a lossless resonance circuit explains that the balancing energy transfer is independently true for all oscillating mode. Now this has to be a little bit, you have to understand. So what is happening now, since you are getting a noise as a function of frequency, for example. Now if you see that, okay, if something, it can happen that certain frequency, the power transfer at a certain frequency to here, and that power is compensated from some other frequency of oscillation. So where power is transferred, some kind of, you are considering some kind of oscillating mode is there, that oscillating mode actually helping to transfer the energy. So it is saying that, okay, certain frequency actually transferring energy here. So to compensate that, because ultimately you are observing as a heat energy, but energy is transferred to as a function of frequency. Some frequency is contributing to this side and some other frequency can contribute to this side. So that type of speculation he argued that, okay, maybe it can happen that they can be thermal equilibrium, but what happens, one frequency is going here and another frequency compensating this. In that case, they are considering, okay, let us consider an oscillator here, some kind of lossless oscillator. Oscillator means at a certain particular frequency it will oscillate, it will store energy. It is just inductor capacitor, no loss elements is there. So in that case, suppose a certain frequency is considered here and it is storing energy here. Okay, a certain frequency F is storing here, right? So in that case, what happens? You see, this will lose some energy. If it is storing some energy to this one, this will store some energy. Then consequently, it will lose some energy, means temperature will be lost. And then temperature will be lost means when losing energy, stored energy here, that means, but here energy stored, this energy will be compensated again because these two are in thermal equilibrium, 1 and 2. So you have to give some energy to that side. Okay, but thermodynamically, when they are in thermal equilibrium, both are in thermal equilibrium, they cannot exchange their energy. So that means you cannot say that a particular frequency, it is giving energy, other frequency it's compensating. That thing is ruled out. So if something happened to one frequency, that will be happen to same frequency, independently you can choose. And we know that earlier that every frequency can be considered as a mode. In case of, you imagine that black body radiation, also we consider that, okay, each of these frequency you can consider a oscillating mode. So that means each oscillating mode independently it preserves its temperature, its energy. It's not sharing temperature. Okay, some energy will be, because modes are normally normal common mathematical analysis is that if they are modes and they are eigen solutions, they are actually orthogonal, they are independent. So they are something like that, right? So in that case, what is happening? Individual frequencies there. What is that mode now? How that happens? Then he considers the figure 3. So figure 3 is nothing but it is stretched. It is just like a 2 register. You are just thinking separately, okay, and connected with a transmission line, lossless transmission line. So instead of this inductor capacitor, in a lumped situation, you consider they are not lumped, they are separated. So this conductor 1 is here and conductor 2 is here, and then their resistors is there and they are separated by length L, and that is lossless. Lossless does not mean, lossless means distributed resistance is 0, R is 0 in a transmission line, but you can have per unit length inductance, per unit length capacitance. So per unit length inductance, per unit length capacitance means you have a characteristics impedance for a lossless transmission line. If you have studied your electromagnetic theory, transmission line, that impedance is square root of L by C, right? So that is your impedance, characteristics impedance. So characteristics impedance, so any wave, any energy will flow from conductor 1 to conductor 2 without any loss in the path. Okay, now you know if you match this R resistance is exactly equal to this R and this R. So what happens? Then you know if characteristics impedance maps to the load connection here. So what happens? Any power comes here, it will be absorbed here, because it is a matching case. What do you call that? Impedance matching. When it is impedance matched, power transfer is maximum. So power will be transferred completely. Similarly, any power wanted to transfer here, so it is some certain ideal situation considered. So in that case, what can happen? That some energy, electromotive, the thermal agitation taking place, that information will go here, and similarly thermal agitation will come here, that will be coming here, and that will be absorbed by here. So this particular situation can be considered also at a distance, right? Now imagine that what is happening. Suppose you sort this part, this instead of resistance you sort this one. After steady state condition, that means it is going this direction and it is going this direction. So you can imagine that this kind of power is going forward direction and backward direction. Transmission line, it's kind of, you can consider some kind of traveling wave is there in forward direction and backward direction. Now suddenly what you do, it's a thought experiment. You just think that okay, this is just sorted and this is sorted. What will happen? In a sorted transmission line, it is like a reflection. So exactly that point, you can see some standing, whatever energy stored already in that path, that will be actually sorted, and then that energy will store, and that energy, when it is stored, then that energy will be storing like a standing wave. So when it is standing wave, then that standing wave, it will be created at various frequencies, right? So it can happen that node here, and maximum antinode here. And another type of things will be there, node here and two antinodes will be there. So all the standing wave will be generated. So that means when you are just sorting and actually you are keeping it that so that energy is not transferred, that means energy will be just stored there as a standing wave and with a different modes. And those modes actually you can consider like a frequencies. Each of this frequency, they are actually helping to hold the energy. Okay, so those particular modes actually, you can imagine that how they transfer energy from one side to another side. Okay. Okay. Now, next, I will come back to the figure 4. Before that, this is the thing you just step by step you try to understand how they are coming up. By equipartition law of thermodynamics, you know thermodynamics, gas. I think if you have studied some statistical mechanics in physics courses in undergraduate level first years, or by chance if you have taken some physics courses, they will know the gas molecules or anything. If you have a various degrees of freedom for movement, oscillations, or something like that, and gas molecules also, if it is moving in all 3 dimensions, different degrees of freedom, every degree of freedom will have certain kind of energy, kinetic energy, average energy, that is actually equal to kB times T. T is the absolute temperature, kB is the Boltzmann constant. Okay, so kBT is the every degree of freedom. So that mode I was talking, he considered that each of this mode actually carrying some kind of energy when you are just preserving that one, and that is kBT. And if you have a bandwidth DF, you know the density of states, and then when we calculated density of states for a certain range of frequency, how many density of states are there? So if you have DF bandwidth, you just multiply as if that DF number of modes are there, each of them will be carrying this much energy. So that because it is a frequency, that's why you consider that it contributes differential power dP equal to kBT dF. So that means all the modes, if you are considering that for a certain band, how much power, differential power it holds, so that is actually kBT dF, it is considered. Now, so you know this RMS voltage evolution, as I have explained earlier, you can consider this RMS voltage evolution, that is a differential voltage square equal to dI square, that means a differential current, and then I square and 2R square dF. So basically you can consider dV square by 2R square, that is actually dI square, that's the current, and you multiply dF because of the bandwidth. So dV by 2R, this is EMF force, and total resistance 2R, that will be actually differential current, and for voltage you are just using this one multiplied by dF. Now you do a little bit of trick here. You just put 2R square means 4R square. Then what you do, 1 by R dI square R. dI square R means differential current, and then R, that the right hand side resistor, how much power it is actually delivered to the right hand side resistor. So then I can write R square cancel, 4R times dP, right? And then this dP, we have the expression like this here, dP equal to kBT dF. So you put there 4R kBT dF. So most of the time you see Johnson-Noyes, people use this expression, equation 330. So that expression actually so nicely derived by Nyquist and Johnson. This is 4R kBT. Simply you are getting kBT times 4R. What is the load resistance? Depending on that, you can find out what would be the voltage square. That means EMF voltage, that will be coming as a noise limited to be coming, and if it is frequency, dF will be there. Okay, now thing is that we have seen that the expression, the noise here, it is coming like this. So what is that? You are considering instead of R as a load, you can consider that is actually something, some reactive impedance is there, complex impedance is there, this load. Some kind of capacitance, inductance will be there. Mostly it is capacitance can be there, if not inductance. So in that case, what happens? This the additional impedance, if you are just considering that total complex impedance will be some resistance 1 by 1 over R times it is 1 over by j omega c, we know that. So it is in parallel. So parallel impedance, equivalent impedance, if you just calculate like this thing. Now, instead of R, whatever you have used here in this derivation, these R's are now this right side R, particularly these are actually replaced by Z now. That's a complex impedance here. So if you just replace that one and dV square will be there, dV square expression. Now what you want to get, and that will be for a band of frequencies df will be there, and here this frequency of course is there because its capacitance on certain frequency is there. So V square equal to 4R kBT and integration, and integration means this function is coming and we have added one more GF square, considering that your photodetector after detection you have some kind of amplifier is there, right? So that gain also included, frequency dependent gain. So if you integrate, that will be your overall noise. So all frequencies you have to integrate, then you can see that if you are measuring as a counting, photon counting, so you have to consider this expression also, all frequency and 4R kBT, if you have to integrate, and 4R kBT, that will appear, give you as a noise term V square. Okay, that means in terms of square value you are getting, because your power is proportional to V square, right? So you will be ultimately measuring your power. That power is normally V square by R. So that's why V square expression is there. And if you see for a particular constant gain, if you are considering for a constant gain, if you just see what is this power as a function of frequency, you see this is 1 over 2 pi f c square is there, R and C you can consider constant, and as you increase the f, this f means your frequency will be, noise will be reducing. So that is how you get, this is called classical noise or Johnson noise. So now my point is that this expression RB, you normally whenever you have a load, even though you are not connecting a capacitor, but some fringing capacitance, everything will be there, and some noise will be there, of course. Some inductance may be there, that also has to be considered. It's a very simplified model, it is calculated, right? So now thing is that when it is this type of noise is there in your circuit, right, and 4 kBT is there, how to reduce this noise? What is the way out? Because there is nothing, we have not discussed anything about geometry, material property. Material property means only resistance and capacitance we are considering. No geometry, no nothing. How to do that? Any material you will have resistance. Anything you connect, there will be some certain kind of capacitance will be there, even though that is small. So if you want to measure, that can be a photodiode, that can be just any detection type, any just superconducting detection, everything. So this noise is invariably will be there because it is a conductor, and superconductor, only thing is that we have to operate at lower temperature. So now you think if you are just operating at a very low temperature, T is absolutely towards 0, then only this value will be 0. So operating temperature, that matters actually. So it is this, that's why this, most of the time, if you want to have a very good, efficient, good responsivity, lower dark current or noise, if you want to have, so you have to operate at very low temperature. So low temperature operation actually gives you noise lower, and then after that, we'll be just discussing, I think I have not completed this one. After that, we'll be discussing short noise. So that thing I will be discussing in the next class. I just stop here up to this point. If you have any questions, we can discuss. Otherwise, we can move to next class, maybe next week. Yeah.
Sir,
I stop. Yeah.
So this Johnson noise is applicable to any kind of photodetector, right? It doesn't have to be a
any type of photo detector, any photo detector, that can be diode, that can be superconducting diode, or anything photomultiplier, wherever you are using that type of that is actually there. Johnson noise is there.
Right.
And even Johnson noise actually is there even for fiber optic communication also, not only in the detection, people also transmission lines also, how much it will be added in different components, that also sometimes it is included.
Right. So the fact that the superconducting single photon detector operates at a very low temperature is also advantageous because the Johnson noise automatically reduces because of the.
Yes, that is true. Only then you have to think about how to deal with the quantum noise or short noise. Short noise actually coming from the actual photon statistics and internal electron statistics, all those type of things I'll be discussing that.
Right. So that is not necessarily because of the diode itself. It is due to the quantum nature of the photon.
Yes. So
Okay.
diode short noise actually you can actually express. That is also independent. They are fundamental things. Short noise, how it is coming, how they are, because two different types of short noise will be there. Just nature will be there. How it is coming differently. Photon, how it is coming, different fluctuations, and how they are actually reacting with your electron hole pair generation, that matters actually.
And sir, I lost connection in the middle, but if you go to the next slide,
Yeah.
in the power of the noise versus the frequency, why is it going after the saturation to the short noise level? Why is it going to zero after a point?
Yeah, that is when we'll discuss the short noise, that will be clear. So
Okay.
we are this level, this classical noise, when it is reduced to zero, then it is saturated to short noise.
Right.
Then short noise again for higher, very high frequency, that will be reducing. That I will discuss in the short noise.
Okay.
So this nature of decay, actually that is explained by this here, very nice model. So this is simple model. And most of the time in the textbook it is not there, so I thought that I just go back to the original paper and see what it is actually. Most of the time the short noise people use this expression only. Just put down the expression, this is your short noise. Sorry, this is your Johnson noise, or this is your short noise.
So the Johnson noise, it's basically what we call the 1/f noise, right?
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
So this is actually the frequency. So 1/f means this is the actual expression I said. That is the
it's a constant.
Right. So this is one.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Good. Okay, thank you. Any other question? If not, I'm just quitting. I have another meeting at 6 o'clock. So